Hey everyone, today's video I want to do a pre-video before I put the video out of us fishing the body of water. And in the video that we're going to be fishing in, we are going to a private lake in Michigan here called Byram Lake. It's in Linden, Michigan. And I've only heard of the lake. I've never fished it, obviously, because I don't know anyone that lives there. Luckily, my brother does, and he got permission from them to come fish it. Excuse me. So we went out to the lake, but before that, I kind of want to do a little breakdown of how I get prepared for a new lake. What I did was I actually have these books, which I know for a fact other states, I don't know exactly what states have them, but I know other states have them. And I know there's places you can look for this information as well online. But for Michigan, we have these books that tell you like about the lake, like max depth, if there were stockings in the like fish stockings in the lake. It gives you a map of the lake and contour lines and kind of how everything sets up. It does tell you water clarity, where boat ramps are. It gives you like the exact coordinates, so you can put it into your phone and get right to the boat launch without having to drive around looking for it. It also tells you what kind of fish are in there, and it also kind of tells you like what size of fish you are going to be, kind of getting. They're not always spot on because they do sometimes not get, like, there are some lakes where you catch bigger fish than what it says there is in there from the survey that they take. But the first thing I did when I found out we were going to this lake, I did a Google Images of the lake to see what it looked like. And when I pulled it up, I seen that there was a lily pad patch at the one end and a lily pad patch at the other end. I seen there was rocks around, like just small little rocks around the edge of the lake. There's lots of houses on this lake, and with lots of houses, that means quite a few docks. So I knew there was docks, some rocks, which normally when you see rocks on the shoreline, normally that means there's rocks out in the water a little bit. And then I also seen that there was a offshore hump, actually two offshore humps. And I got to see the water clarity, obviously. And so that gives you an idea of kind of what you're going to be going into for bait selection or bait color selection, and maybe how you're going to fish. Because if it had been all lily pads all the way around the whole thing, I'd have probably approached it differently. I'd have took a frog, which I didn't take a frog. I kind of wish I would have, because the two sections that did have lily pads could have been really good frog fishing, especially the one end, because we did really good out in front of the lily pads in the slightly deeper water and off the edge of the lily pads. But after I looked up my Google Map imaging, I went into the book that I have, and the lake says it gives me the max depth of 50 feet. It tells you how big it is, which it said it was 132 acres or 134, and it was not that big. It was bigger than that by quite a bit. It was more like the 350 to maybe 400 acres. And, probably not that big. It was probably more like 200 to 300. But it was a good size lake. I don't know my acreage. I just know it wasn't no 100 acres, because there's lakes that are smaller than that lake that are around the 100-something mark. So I know this lake's bigger than that, for one. But anyway, the book says the main types of forage are crawfish, golden shiners, and these minnows called silver brooksides, which I've never heard of those minnows a day in my life until I read about them. And then I Google searched them, found pictures of them, And they kind of remind me that, like, the body, the snout, everything about them reminds me of what a barracuda looks like. Just they don't get nowhere near as big, and they're not toothy. They're just little minnows. They're 3 to 4 inch minnows. So I based most of my baits off of that. And I want to do a quick breakdown of where I fish these baits, the baits that they are. So we're going to start with the first one. Now this first rod, or this first bait, I only caught one fish on. And I only fished this bait for probably 10 to 15 minutes, and I wasn't feeling it with this bait for some reason. I think a lot of the reason was because I was seeing all these, the silver brookside were everywhere, literally. This lake is loaded in these minnows. So I just wanted to do something that looked a lot better, but whenever you're going to a new body of water, a wacky worm is not a bad option for bass to start with. Wacky worm is a phenomenal bait. It absolutely smashes the fish. This is a Berkley power bait, 5 1/4 inch, the general, in the color purple. And I caught one fish, so I did catch a fish on it. I do think I could have caught more fish on it, but I didn't fish it very long just because seeing all those bait fish surfacing around me and some of them being chased by fish, I couldn't not pick something else up. I just knew that there was something better than the wacky worm, which normally is not the case, but in this case, there was something better. And that's when I picked this bad boy up. So this rod right here has my Berkley topwater that I was slamming them on. So because this lake has so many silver brookside, I tied on this bait, which is a little bigger than what the bait was, but because it's a moving bait, the fish didn't get the best of looks. They were just seeing the flash of it back and forth because I went with a Berkley Jaywalker 100 in the straight chrome color. As you can see, the eye's missing. You can see the rash marks from the hooks all the way around this thing. This is probably one of my favorite colors to go to, whether it's river fishing, lake fishing, creek fishing. If I go to a topwater, normally I really like this chrome color just because it imitates, it imitates shad, minnows, a lot of bait fish. So that's what I caught 50% of my fish on. And what I used that around was I was fishing shallow with it to begin with. Every once in a while we'd come to a floating dock that was sitting in about 10 foot of water, 10 to 12 foot of water. I would cast to that. I caught a couple fish on those. I missed a couple fish on those floating docks. So I also fished it around these weed beds. There was these weed beds in the far southeast side of the lake, and the weed beds were in 6 to 8 foot of water, and they come up to about 2 to 3 foot below the surface. And I would cast over them weed beds, and I'd catch either one fish or multiple fish depending on how big the weed bed was. But there was multiple times I caught more than one fish. There was only, I think, one weed bed that I caught one fish on. But I fished that majority of the day. I also fished it in open water around the 8 to 10 foot range, just blind casting, just picking areas and casting along, and I was catching fish because they were chasing them brookside, and the fish were honestly loaded everywhere. And I think that's why the fish were such a, they didn't really have too many good sized largemouth. It was all the same sizes because there's so many of them. I feel like not many people are keeping them there, and that could be what's not helping this fishery grow bigger bass. I think the biggest bass that I seen that I missed was probably a 2.5 pounder, and that's not even a big largemouth, because here in Michigan, yeah, we don't get like Florida or Texas or California sized largemouth, but we can get 7-8 pounders. We may even get, there might be 9 pounders out there, just not too many of them. But this lake, I think my biggest bass that I caught was probably maybe 2 pounds at most. But after I was using that, I kind of started coordinating between two baits. Um, when we kind of got into these areas where the deeper water came up shallower, I was starting to pick up this right here. And this is a drop shot. I got a Berkley Fusion 19 drop shot hook on there, size 1, with a Berkley Max Scent flat nose minnow in the color blue pearl black hologram. That is a 4-inch bait, and it resembled them silver Brookside really well. And I was running my Woo tungsten weight. That was a 1/4 ounce, about 8 inches to a foot below the hook. Now, I do fish this a little differently because I was using Mega Live with this. There was a couple times where I just casted this bait out where I knew there was a drop off edge and caught some fish without Mega Live. But primarily when I was using this bait right here, I was using Mega Live with it. And this was not, I wasn't using Mega Live with this. I was just blind casting with that. But I was using Mega Live with the drop shot. And, whoops, I like to fish the drop shot a little differently. Where people would use a jig and a minnow, I like to use the drop shot. Not saying the jig and a minnow would not catch fish, because it would. And I could probably fish it the same way, but this is my confidence bait. I don't know what it is, but a drop shot is probably my go-to finesse fishing technique, which I would much rather be power fishing or topwater fishing in general, but not always can you do that. So when I have to go finesse, a drop shot is my go-to all-time. Other than a wacky worm, even then I would still honestly rather be drop shotting over wacky worming, because that's something I do really well with, and that's probably one of my strongest finesse techniques is a drop shot. So what I was doing with the drop shot is if I would see fish cruising by themselves, and we caught them anywhere from, using Mega Live at least, anywhere from the 10 foot out to, I think the deepest fish I caught was in 22 foot yesterday. I had a couple fish out deeper that chased, but they would only chase, and then once it got so far down, they would stop. Like, there was a thermocline already, which is odd because it's just starting to warm up. There shouldn't be a thermocline quite yet, you wouldn't think, but there must have been. Or they just didn't have interest in the bait, I don't know. But what I like to do with the drop shot is cast it out to the fish, let it drop down. If I can tell which way they're going on Mega Live, like if they're coming to me or going away from me, I like to try and put the bait out in front of them, let it drop down past them, and they'll follow it down to the bottom. And if they don't eat it as soon as it hits the bottom, they'll at least be right there, and all I got to do normally is like 1-2 little pops and it's game over. So, but not always is that the case either, because I had a lot of fish that would follow me down and veer off, or they'd follow it so far and just like give up. I don't know. It's pretty funny watching them do that. And that's one neat thing about Mega Live. I know a lot of people don't like it, but I just like to catch fish. So no matter how I got to do it, I'm going to fish it. I would prefer not to use Mega Live because, like I said, I love topwater fishing, and you don't really need Mega Live for topwater unless I'm out super deep and I'm following schools around. Then I'll do that, but we weren't following those schools with the topwater, just casting and winding. But that's how I like to fish the drop shot. Now, I would like to start doing the jig head and the minnow with Mega Live more often than trying to get away from the drop shot. But that's my confidence, so we'll see. But next up, this rod, I only caught a couple fish. I don't remember how many exactly, but I didn't catch very many on this rod. This rod, I was using something that I was just casting and winding, either around weed beds or in the open water. This is a Core Tackle finesse tush hook with a Kitech swing impact fat and a Tackle Warehouse exclusive color called, I believe it's like Gray Ghost or something like that. It's a really sweet color, looks very natural, and I really absolutely love that new tush hook by Core Tackle because that thing is sweet. It replaces a jig head. Now don't get me wrong, I'm still going to use jig heads, but this tush swim bait hook, finesse tush hook, is awesome. I've been really liking a lot of the Core Tackle stuff. Like my next bait I'm going to show you that I actually caught a good amount of fish on is also a Core Tackle terminal tackle. And that is this bait right here. So, like I said, that one I only caught a couple fish on. And I don't know how many fish I caught on this, but I caught a couple more than what I did on that. And this is the Core Tackle Hover Rig. Now I got a Berkley Pro Powerbait Pro Twitch Tail minnow in the 3-inch, or it's only a 3-inch version in these, in the color Bleak. As you can see, it's very natural, clear, got some blue flake in it. Looked, I mean, perfect profile, everything about it. Honestly, all I would do with this is this rod I would either cast to a drop-off edge. I cast it around, excuse me. Alright, so how I use that was I would cast it out along the edge of weeds and let it drop down and get a bite, or I'd cast it next to the floating boat docks, or the floating docks that were out off into the deeper water, because I had missed a fish on the top water, so I'd follow it up with that bait and I caught a couple fish doing that. And I also did a couple times where we were off the drop-off edge, and I would use Mega Live in the areas that I knew had no weeds. It was just open, flat water or sand bottom. I would pan around the drop-off edge and cast out to the drop-off edge and just let that sink down. And that bait actually does a twirl down to the bottom on slack line. And when you'd reel up the slack line and pop it every once in a while, that's when you'd get your bites, because it'd look like a dying bait fish. And then the very last rod and reel, which I want to talk about the rod as well on this one, which I'm going to go over the bait first, and then I'll tell you about the rod. And I'll tell you the reason why and everything. But the last bait, this bait I used for Mega Live. This is the 6th Sense Flock hair jig in the color Ice Shad, I believe it is. And this is a 3/8 ounce hair jig. And what I was doing with this is when I was using Mega Live, unlike the drop shot, I wasn't doing so hot casting this to single fish. I caught I think it was like 2 or 3 fish if they were by themselves on this. But most of the fish that I caught on this bait, when I would catch them, they would have to be by themselves. Or not by themselves, sorry. They'd have to be in a group of fish. So, and I apologize if you can hear that in the background. Tomorrow's the 4th of July, so people are lighting off fireworks tonight. And this video probably isn't going to be posted around, well, it's not going to be posted around then, because I got quite a few videos ahead of this, or had quite a few videos ahead of this. So you've already seen those videos possibly, but this, I was casting to groups of fish, and that's when I would normally get bit. But the reason I want to talk about this, dang it, I don't have the rod out here. Oh yeah, that's right, it's in there. So the rod I originally tried throwing this on was a Veritas 7'6" medium heavy, and I wasn't making pinpoint casts because it's a 3/8 ounce. I could use the, like I have there, the Cumberland Pro hair jig. I forgot the chicken. No, that's not, that's Outcast. Can't remember the name of the Shuttercock. That's what it's called. So the Cumberland Pro Shuttercock hair jig. I got those and they're 5/8 ounce, so they're heavy. And I could cast that on them on the 7.6 and be very accurate. But with this rod, or with this, the 3/8 ounce 6 cents hair jig, I couldn't do that. So I decided I was going to try this rod because I felt like this combo right here would do what I wanted it to do. And let me tell you, this rod did awesome. This is the Abu Garcia Pro Series rod. This is a bladed jig rod. It's a 7.3 medium heavy, moderate fast action, designed by Hank Cherry. And this has a Revo SX 7.3-1, or is it 6.7-1? 6.7-1. 6.7-1 gear ratio reel, and I'm running 14-pound Berkley Vantage fluorocarbon on here. And I use this rod for bladed jigs, spinner baits, and sometimes like underspins and swim bait heads, smaller ones. So I decided, I was like, you know what, since I throw that stuff on this rod, I'm going to throw this Flock hair jig and see how accurate it is. And let me tell you, I was making some very accurate casts. It was very smooth. I could place it where I wanted it. And on the hair jig, when I would get bit, that rod loaded up beautifully. So if you're looking for, like, if you're looking to throw a 3/8 ounce hair jig, and you're used to throwing a bigger hair jig on a bigger rod, I would suggest going to a 7.3 medium heavy moderate fast, or your bladed jig rod or spinnerbait rod. So even probably like a 7.10, or not 7.10, 7 foot medium heavy moderate fast, or a 7.4 medium heavy moderate fast, even a 7.5 medium heavy moderate fast. I think it was just because it was a fast rod, not a moderate fast. I think that tip is what made the whole difference with the bait. But I would highly suggest 7.3. It worked phenomenally for me. And so, yeah, I hope these tips help you and kind of give you an idea of where to fish. Oh, one last thing. The offshore humps, I caught, I was using the hair jig on the drop-off edges as well as the drop shot. So that's another thing, is them offshore humps, they always play a factor, even in the spring, even in the fall. I think these offshore humps, just because of the fact that they go out into deeper water so quickly, they're phenomenal year-round. I believe, in my opinion, fish come up on the tops of these flats, depending on what kind of fish you're fishing for. But I feel like largemouth, smallmouth, spotted bass, which we don't have any of those in Michigan, but even spotted bass I feel like are going to be very similar in a sense, which obviously they're all different in their own way. But when it comes to a lake, I feel like them offshore humps, I do believe that fish, all fish use those for like spawning flats, because normally they, like this one for instance, was, the top of it was 5 foot of water. That's perfect depth for spawning. So always make sure you look for stuff like that. And I hope these tips helped, and we'll see you on the next video. And I hope you enjoy the video of us catching the fish and actually putting these baits to use. So we'll catch you on the next video. Make sure you like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.